Sevan watched herself disappear. The makeup she'd worn swirled around the drain of a fancy marble sink, leaving her barefaced and exposed. Without the wig she'd ripped off moments before, and the acrylic nails she sheared from her fingers one by one with her pocket knife, she was transforming back into her alter ego, Rivet. Rivet was a puny prospect in the Wildfire outlaw motorcycle gang. Someone with a fresh mouth, who was the least threatening and most easily overlooked in the pack, exactly as had suited her purposes. Oh yeah, Rivet was also a guy. At least that's what the assholes in the club thought, since women weren't allowed to join in their biker games. She'd done her best to erase any traces of her femininity, although she'd never been especially girly, and had played into their biases. They didn't think a woman could know her way around engines better than they did. And Sevan was a killer mechanic. Her grandfather had made sure of it. Only he probably hadn't intended for this to be how she employed the skills he'd taught her over the years. Too bad. This was what she had to do. For herself. For her murdered mother. And for her half-sister, Joy, who'd only discovered Sevan existed a few minutes ago. The other woman had been so gracious and so welcoming that for a heartbeat, Sevan had felt her resolve weakening and her rage sputtering like an engine running out of gas. What would it be like if she could forget her purpose and walk away? Start a peaceful life here in Middletown with her sister, who'd previously been a friend even when she hadn't known they were related. Joy's new family, and the other skilled mechanics who owned and ran the Hot Rides motorcycle shop. There was no use in dreaming about it because it wasn't going to happen. Not until she made Angus, Wildfire's president, pay for what he'd done to her family and so many other people like them. At least she finally had some help. Sevan swept her discarded claws from the counter into the pristine trash can of Country Star, Case and Cox's Mountain Lodge. So different from where she'd been and where she was heading. She couldn't allow herself to get used to any of this. Not the clean, luxurious accommodations, the newfound allies surrounding her, and definitely not the way she'd let her guard down around them almost instantly. Not if she wanted to survive the coming weeks. Sevan allowed her true self to be swallowed up and locked away in a deep, dark part of her psyche, while stepping back to admire her handiwork in the mirror over the sink. A few passes of her splayed hand through her shorn hair made it stand up in spiky disarray. Her eyes were cold and hard, unrecognizable. Perfect. Rivet was back in control. If seeing that too familiar boyish face made her stomach cramp, she ignored it. It was one of many things she would have to compartmentalize if she was going to succeed on her mission. Desire was another. She rubbed her hands over her chest, making sure no hint of her recently hardened nipples, too pronounced to belong to a young man, showed through her t-shirt. Her new boss, Jordan, one of Cason Cox's 2 lovers, that lucky bastard, had promised to conjure up some binders for her pronto. She supposed super spies and their teams of security consultants had access to all sorts of resources she hadn't, while attempting to bring down Wildfire on her own. That was a plus, because being in close contact with one of his minions, Levi Jansen, was going to make keeping her libido under wraps a necessity. Of all the damn people in Wildfire, to be an undercover agent, it had to be him, didn't it? Son of a bitch.